One of them, I'm curious because I've seen a lot of evolutionary biologists, I've seen a lot of evolutionary psychologists, especially the psychologists and biologists who are interested in writing about polygamy and who are interested in writing about, um, more naturalistic behavior, will very often use chimpanzees as a viable metric to sort of, so the chimpanzees do this, and polygamy is a part of their thing. And how, how safe are we when we are comparing chimpanzees with humans in terms of evolutionary behavior?
Well, you know, there are two schools of thought. One school says, well, look, their genome is 98% similar to humans. And what's more, they're the only living ancestors, so why not look to chimpanzees? But on the other hand, you can say that 2% difference
Is all that matters.
accounts for so many other things, not only language. We're bipedal, we have larger brains,
We are cooperative.
we're cooperative. So take the thing about cooperation. If you, with chimpanzees, you typically have a dominance hierarchy, and it's the alpha male who gets the first crack at food. So if it's been demonstrated by a psychologist named Tomasello, who studied both chimpanzees and children. So he did a lot of research on chimpanzees. He arranged a situation where in one room you have a dominant chimp and in another room you have a subordinate chimp, and in between you put some food, and they both can see this. And if the subordinate chimp sees the dominant chimp have access to the food, it won't even try to get the food. However, if you put a barrier in front of the entrance to the dominant chimp's room so that the dominant chimp cannot see the food, then the subordinate will go out and grab the food. So whenever there's food, there's tremendous competition. Now, there's now evidence from paleoanthropology that our ancestors, such as Homo erectus, who evolved about 2 million years ago, shared food. That the whole dominance issue was replaced by cooperation.
Fantastic.
And
2 million years ago.
2 million years ago. So given that they were sharing food, that's prima facie evidence that they were cooperating, that one individual didn't hog the food at the expense of others. And then there's the question of, so where did that cooperation come from? And that's another story. There's a anthropologist named Artie who says it has to do with cooperative breeding, that Homo erectus was not only raised by the mother, but by many other parents, alloparents, who also share.
Is this the bonobo model?
Is this what?
The bonobo model of bonobos raise their children?
No,
like
not bonobos. This is, it's called, if you have cooperative breeding, your mother does provide the main protection and access, but so does the grandmother, so do brothers and sisters, even the father can partake in rearing the young. So her insight is that the infant not only has to form an emotional connection with the mother, but with all these other alloparents. And her point is that because of satisfying these other alloparents, there's selection for that infant to be cooperative. That those infants who can satisfy many alloparents have a greater chance of survival than those who don't.
Right.
And that's her argument as to where cooperation came from.
Interesting. It is also so interesting to me that paleoanthropology has so much to say about evolutionary biology and psychology in some sense. And
that's
so
that's only in the last 30 or 40 years.
Right. So I'm curious, when you said that there is about 24 species between chimpanzees and humans in some sense, right? And that the best possible metric to understand what is happening to us in terms of evolution would be a dead ancestor, right?
Yes.
And I'm assuming paleoanthropology has figured that there were all these species through fossils. So I'm curious if there is like, is that the evidence, if I'm say testing for, was joint attention or intersubjectivity present in my last cousin?
Well,
Are we doing
or,
morphological?
yeah. The evidence from paleoanthropology points to Homo erectus, this second, ancestor that was like humans. First, there was Homo habilis,
Mhm.
and then half a million years later, Homo erectus appeared.
Hmm.
Homo erectus, by the way, seemed to be around until maybe 1 to 200,000 years ago. So they were around for
A
almost
very long time.
for more than 1.5 million years. And they were the first ancestor who left Africa.
Hmm.
Then a few 100,000 years, they went to the Middle East, they went to Southeast Asia, and to Java.
Hmm.
So they had to have some way of communicating to keep their groups coherent. But the most interesting fact is that they seemed to scavenge animals. They weren't um, uh, able to hunt animals, but they were able to find a dead animal and organize other Homo erectus to come help them scavenge, that is, to butcher the animal to get meat. And in answer to Wallace's question, it's clear that they needed meat because their brains were so much larger than a chimpanzee's, and meat is the most efficient way of getting the protein,
Energy, right?
to sustain these large brains. So there was clearly survival value in scavenging. And in scavenging, by the way, Homo erectus were much taller and really bipedal. They were almost like marathon runners. They could cover a tremendous area of East Africa. So imagine one Homo erectus who discovers a dead zebra, say killed by a lion, and or a saber-toothed tiger, or whatever other carnivores were around at the time. The Homo erectus had to go back to his group and say, I just discovered a dead zebra or a dead elephant, and I need your help in scaring away other animals who might be interested in scavenging and in butchering that animal. Homo erectus was able to use stone tools with sharp edges to cut through the hides of these animals. So, but they couldn't do it alone. They needed help. And one theory is that after discovering a dead animal, Homo erectus had to communicate to other members of his group that I found a dead animal, but that dead animal couldn't be seen. It was miles away.
Hmm.
So the question is, how do you describe an object that they can't see?
Mhm.
And that requires what linguists refer to as displacement. They have to get the other Homo erectus to think about an object they could not see. And that's the linguist who's responsible for that theory argues that's where words came from. By getting somebody to think about something they can't see. And I think that's the best explanation for where the words originally came from.